Good evening. This week's parsha is Parshas Vayeira, and it says colorful as any Seder could possibly be, with so many different inyonim in it. I wanted to start to say that the Ramban says that Avram Avinu knew that they were angels. And the question some ask is, if he knew, and the Ramban himself says it, that if he knew they were angels, what was he? Angels don't eat. Why was he going out of his way to give the best of the best, the meat? And like Rashi brings the Chazal, that he served the meat with chardal, with mustard. You know, many people would think, when did mustard start? 100 years ago. But not so. Rashi uses the word chardal, which means mustard. He wanted it as tasty as could be. Why? They could not consume it. As soon as they would put it near their mouth, it would become dissolved. It would become... Angels cannot partake in Gashmias. So why did they go to all the bother? And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Barditchev used to say on this Ramban that we learn from the story of Avram Avinu that the lengths that we have to go to make a guest comfortable. They appeared to him as in the format of human beings. And they appeared to him not in a chalom, in a dream, but in a actual meeting of people to come to him. And once it was already completely encompassed within an atmosphere of this world, he had to behave as if regular human beings were coming to him and regular people were participating in the Suda, and act even knowing, says the Ramban, that they were not human beings. The lesson to us is when we have people at our table, it's not only the food and the magnificent or beautiful decoration, the matching napkins and the tablecloths, but we have to go out of our way that a person should be comfortable. For instance, if someone simple came to eat in one's house, and that person never missed daf yomi, so he doesn't have to accentuate, I have to, we're going to finish the Suda because I have to get back to the daf yomi. That person never even heard of what daf yomi is. So why bring it up and make him possibly uncomfortable? We have to say things and do things that will elevate the level of the frame of mind of the person who you have welcomed to host and to be part of your Suda at home. Now, one of the things that he served, it says, Uven habokor. Now there's a question, like when we teach second or third graders Parshas Vayeira, so inevitably a student is going to put up their hand and say, how could he have served meat and milk, milchiks and fleishiks in the same seuda? So we answer to children that he first gave the milchiks, the dairy, and then he gave the fleishiks. But the Mekubalim say a different answer. because the pasuk says, "Uven habokar asher osa." We know that Avram Avinu wrote the Sefer HaYetzirah. The Sefer HaYetzirah is the book of creation, how everything through Shemus and letters, Hebrew letters, were created. And indeed, the Maharal MiPrague, when he made the Goylem to save Jews' lives, how did he make the Goylem? He made it with the Sefer Yetzirah that Avram Avinu wrote. So it says, the Mekubalim bring, that when he went out to the flock of animals to choose an animal to prepare for them, he didn't find anything that he thought was that would be super tasty and heavy, that it had the juice of a well-fed animal. So what he did was, he had an animal suddenly appear that he, with his Sefer HaYetzirah and knowing how to do it, he created on the spot an animal. And that's why the pasuk says, "Uven habokar," the animal, the cow, asher osa, that he made. It doesn't say asher heichen, that he prepared, or asher shochat, that he went and shechted, but it says asher osa. He created an animal and say the Mekubalim, that the only thing that you can't mix fleishiks and milchiks are things that are normally born and come into this world. They fall under the umbrella of the hilchas, all the halachas which deal with basar b'cholav, milchiks and flesh. But if an animal flies down from heaven or walks out of a bush that was just created, it doesn't have and fall into that category that you have to adhere to milchiks and fleishiks. So we see to the great extent that Avram Avinu went out to make a super delicious meal for his guests. So the kasha is asked, here he went, we know that the Soles, Lushi Vasiu goes, that he told Sarah to prepare there were like 10 levels of flour to pick the most refined and expensive flour to make the bread and whatever she was serving. And the Medrash brings that there was so much bread and so much. As a matter of fact, he had 3 tongues from 3 different the 3 tongues that he prepared, and on 1 tongue alone, 50 people could eat. There's so much, and a tongue is so long in the cow. But he prepared 3 separate tongues, according to those, I guess, that don't ascribe to the fact that he made his own, that there were 3 animals. And all of this flour to make the matzahs, it was Pesach, like we know that when he went to Lot, one of the 3 angels, one angel came to heal Avram, and one angel came and did 2 missions to tell Sarah she's going to have a year from then a child. And the 3rd thing was that in addition to tell Sarah that she'd have a baby, was to save Lot. Now, the amount of the Suda was unbelievable, and the amount of flour was like also for 50 people. But when it comes to the pasuk about water, he said to them, Yukach no ma'at mayim. Ma'at means a little water. Why a little? He was being magnanimous. Why would the pasuk say that he said ma'at mayim? And the Meforshim answer, because everything that our Avos did, and that's recorded, that they said, that they did in action, lemaisa, were items that they wanted to instill, implant, and inculcate to the neshamas of Klal Yisrael. And on one hand, the Suda was the lesson of how to treat guests. But on the other hand, what happens if somebody meets somebody Shabbos afternoon and his friend asks him, well, where are you eating shalosh shudas? And he said, I'll tell you the truth, I have no idea. So he said, come to me. Now, the person could have easily avoided inviting him, but because he really didn't have anything in the house. And all he had was some simple tuna fish or some egg salad to give him. He had nothing which was magnanimous, which was absolutely delicious and luxurious or upscale. But that's the lesson. By saying ma'at mayim, don't ever hesitate from inviting someone, even if you could have an excuse not to do it, because you're thinking in your mind that, oh yeah, I don't even have anything, special to give to him. Maybe I should wait for next time. There's rarely a next time. We have to live with each and every day and the opportunities which cross our path. And if a person meets someone and they're friendly and he could invite him over, the creation of good atmosphere, the laughter, the smiling, the making the person feel so happy that he's there, what you're serving and what you're not serving is not going to make the difference. And that we learned, this is Meforshim say this, from the Yukach no ma'at mayim, that Avram Avinu wanted that his children would always be up front with inviting guests regardless of what they have or don't have in their homes. And it remained for posterity that the position of framing a mind to always welcome and to work on the atmosphere, that will leave the person happy that he came and happy when he thinks about the encounter and the shalosh shudas or the malava malka after he leaves. Now, the pasuk says, Vayisa einav vayar. Avram Avinu, it was the third day after he was 99 years old, and he just had the bris milah, and he was suffering because one angel, one malach came to heal him. He was in pain. And it was a scorched day of heat. So it wasn't the easiest time for him. But the pasuk says, Vayar, v'hine shloisha anoshim nitzavim olav, that there were 3 people passing by. Vayar, and he saw, Vayisa ina vayar, v'hine shlosha anotzavim olav vayar, vayaretz likrosam, vayishtachu ortza. That the pasuk employs the word vayar twice. It says he picked up his eyes and he saw, and then v'hine shloisha anoshim, there were 3 people there, vayar, and he saw. A second time, why, ask the Meforshim, does the pasuk have to say a second time vayar? And they answer and say, because many people have opportunities, and they jump at the opportunity. And they're warm about the opportunity, the mitzvah that came their way, the chesed that came their way. But after an hour or two, they start to cool down. I have such a load already on my shoulders. Do I have to take this on too? Somebody else will pick up the whatever the schus is. And the pasuk wants to tell you that when he saw the people, there was such excitement. Vayeira, there was such excitement. And even as the couple hours started to pass, it was still Vayeira from that original Vayeira. The excitement was the same. It wasn't any different. And it was able to provide the level of hislavus, of such warmth and sensitivity to the schus of doing a mitzvah, that the Torah says, again, the word Vayeira. Now, that equally enthusiastic feeling of Avram Avinu, the Medrash says that when Moshe Rabbeinu came up to Shemayim to get the Torah, so the Malachim were complaining. What? And Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest. I mean, Zohar Kodesh says in Parshas Vayechi that Yaakov Avinu, who was the greatest of the three Avos, that he got almost, he achieved almost the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Very close, but he didn't reach that level because the greatest person, human being, who lived in this world was Moshe Rabbeinu. And they were complaining, though, as great as he was, you're going to give the Torah with all of its kedusha and its tahara and its special uniqueness, that it's the HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, Yisrael v'yaraisa dekudisha barichu chadu, it's all one, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Torah and Klal Yisrael, the neshamas of Klal, it's all one thing. But with everything, the Malachim complained, you're giving the Torah to the humans. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed them, changed the image of Moshe Rabbeinu to Avram Avinu. And the Medrash explains that, oh, that's the one that hosted us. That's the one that was so kind and did everything and anything in the heat of the day when he was so sick. But it also says in that Medrash that Avram Avinu at that point was compared to a esrig, a lulav, hadassim, and aravos. And then the Malachim pulled back and allowed Moshe Rabbeinu to step forward and give it. What does esrig have to do with Avram Avinu? And the answer is that the Gemara says that an esrig is unique because it's the only fruit that's hador be'ilan meshana l'shana. That means other fruits, we know it comes winter, they wither away, they fall off the tree becomes barren. But an esrig tree remains in its state, color, size, and freshness a whole year, from year to year. So that shows constancy and consistency. And that's what Avram Avinu had. Vayeira, he saw with such enthusiasm and such thirst to run after them and to do everything he had to do to take care of them. And 2 hours later and 4 hours later, he was still at that same level of excitement. And he was so thrilled that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent him the opportunity to do for the guests and to extend the Hachnosas Orchem. Now, we know that after they finished with the Avram Avinu, 2 of them went down to Sodom to destroy Sodom. But before that happened, HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Sedra, look at the pasuk, Hamachasa ani me Avram, ki yadativ, I love Avram, he's my special child, Ben Yochid. I'm not going to tell him what I'm about to do to Sodom, so he told him. So Avram Avinu said, wait, how about if there's 50 tzaddikim in the city? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, oh, I won't destroy it then. And how about if there's 45? And how about if there's only 40? Or 30, or 20, or 10? And to each number, HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered and said, if there are that many tzaddikim in the city, I'm not destroying the city. Now, HaKadosh Baruch, the Meforshim asked, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that at the end of the story, they're being destroyed. So it looks like a tease to Avram Avinu. In other words, if he knew, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew it's going to happen at the end, what did he let him go through this whole process of begging for 50 and 40 and 30 and 20? He knew at the end it's not going to happen, so why didn't he just tell him? They are Rishoim Gemurim and they're going to be destroyed. But he didn't do that. He let Avram Avinu express himself in every which way to beg forgiveness for them and that they would be able to live and not be destroyed. So Kadmonim say that Avram Avinu wanted to be able to put into the neshamas of Klal Yisrael that when they daven, that there should be, when there is sincerity, it's going to happen. Now, all of you listening would say, I davened last year for an uncle who was dying. We cried, we gave tzedakah, we were saying day and night, Tillim, we gave a Sefer Torah, and he died. So it didn't happen. But the answer is it always happens, but the question is when. And I've said to you in past years that when a person, let's say, has a grandson crossing a street, that in Shemayim he was supposed to be hit and killed, but the car swerves and misses the boy completely. That was because 80 years before, there was a tefillah by a Zayda, and it's, openly to the people, it didn't appear as if the tefillah worked. But it was put into a file cabinet in heaven, and when that boy, that grandchild, was crossing the street, they pulled out that tefillah, and there's one Tanai that the tefillah has to be a pure tefillah. That means if someone's davening so that the people around them should see how he's davening, that waters it down to almost nothing. But if there's a sincere tefillah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always affected, like in the case, like I told you, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go into Eretz Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped him and said, don't say one more tefillah, because if you do, I'm going to have to let you go into Eretz Yisrael, and it's not meant to be. So tefillah works. Where do we owe the thanks to? We owe it to Avram Avinu in his pleading for the Anshe Sodom. As bad as they were, he wanted to be able to have them survive. Now they got to Lot, and they told him, get out, you're coming with us, the city's going to be destroyed. And your uncle Avram Avinu tried to save the city, it didn't go, it's going to be destroyed. And tell your daughters and their husbands that they should get their things, and it's going to be happening shortly. And as the pasuk says, the sons-in-law laughed. They thought it was one big joke. But they weren't laughing a few hours later, because they stayed behind, and the daughters with Lot's wife left, and the city was destroyed. Now, as they were leaving, there were supposed to be 5 cities destroyed. It wasn't just Sodom. One of them was Tzoar. So when they left, the Malachim told Lot, you have to go escape over there, that route. And Lot said, oh, do me a favor. One of the 5 cities you want to destroy is Tzoar. And that's where I want to go. I don't want to go where you pointed to, that go there. I want to go to Tzoar. So the Malachim said, okay, we're going to save the city of Tzoar. We're not destroying them. So the question asked by the Kadmonim, and it's an unbelievable question, Avram Avinu, who begged for even 10 people to look at and find some tzidkus and save the city and their schus, he ended up not saving one person of Sodom. And here Lot went out with the 2 angels and said, oh, you see Tzoar that you're about to destroy? Don't destroy them. They said, okay, we're not destroying. Avram Avinu couldn't get anything of what he asked, and here Lot got the whole city. And the answer that they say is that the Malachim felt that since Lot put his life on the line, and he even, the Meshuggah, went and offered his 2 daughters, said, take my daughters and do whatever you want, but don't touch these men. So he put his life and his family on the line to save these men. They owed him Hakoras Hatov, appreciation and total expression of that appreciation. So they couldn't turn down his request. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avram Avinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he didn't ask the 3 angels that he fed and everything, because had he asked the 3 angels, they would have had to do it, the Mefarshim say, the Kadmonim, that he would have had to save Al Hakoras Hatov, the city of Sodom. So we see how far the level of saving and doing someone a toiva that affects our mahus. But it's not only the great things that a person saves a life and that the person eternally, forever, is thankful and appreciative and sends shalach manas to the person every year. But even for the small things, that someone's standing there, going out the door of a store and sees you carrying heavy bags, and holds the door and then offers you to help carry the pack. There has to be a koras hatova, a warm, sincere thank you to the person who's holding that door and extending himself to do for him something that at that moment is valuable. And we have to work on ourselves that people around us, family, friends, neighbors, are always doing. We're constantly recipients of kindness and joy from another person, and we have to train ourselves to be able to express ourselves properly and to do something which is everlasting. I remember when I did the shidduch of Rav Pam's son in Toronto, David, Harav David, and his wife Malki. Malki is a daughter of Rabbi Friedman, Rabbi and Rebbetzin Friedman. And Rabbi Friedman said to me, maybe you have a chaver in Torah V'das that could be for my daughter Malki. I said, how about my chaver David Pam? And they got married today. They have 14, 15 children, 100 Einik, Baruch Hashem. I mean, it worked. So Rav Pam, every time he saw me, Rav Pam meaning David's father, Zechrona Levracha, he thanked me. So at some point, after 10 years of him seeing me all the time and thanking me, I said, the Rosh Yeshiva thanked me so many times. I'm happy I did it. I'm happy they're happy. I'm happy, Baruch Hashem, they have a beautiful family, everything. But the Rosh Yeshiva doesn't have to go out of his way to constantly thank me. So the Rosh Yeshiva answered and said that I thanked you for 25 years. At that point, they were married 25 years. Today it's probably 55 or 60 years. And I will thank you for all the years to come, because the thanks is so abundant that we are so appreciative what you did for the family that we will always, always thank you for it. So the point being that we have to become more sensitive in our expressions and the things that we do to bring out the goodness in the other person who went out of their way for us. Now, we know that when the angels came in, the three angels, Avram brought them in, they said, Vayomru Elov, that these three angels, the Malachim, said to Avram Avinu, Aye Sarah Ishtecha, where is your wife Sarah? Now, it says, Vayomru Elov, and on the word Elov are dots, which are halacha l'Moshe miSinai. A Sefer Torah that doesn't have those dots has to be redone. It's puzzle. Now the three dots are on the letters Aleph, Yud, Vav. But Elov is spelled with a lamed, but there's no dot on top of the lamed. So the Meforshim, the Medrash says, and by the way, but there's a dot on each of those other three letters, above the Aleph and above the Yud and above the Vav. So instead of reading it, a love, Vayomru a love, that the three angels said to him, to Avram, where is Aye Sarah Ishtecha? They said to Sarah, Aye, without the lamed, the dotted letters, Where is Avraham? Where is he? They asked Sarah. And from that, the Medrash says that when somebody comes into a house, you're supposed to ask the shalom, how is your missus and the family, but talking about the missus, and the Medrash says also that we learned from this that you're supposed to ask the missus and the husband. You ask the missus the husband and the husband the missus. So the dot on these three, you would read the word, if you leave out the lamed that has no dot, it's Aye, Sarah Ishtecha, but it's referring, the drash is that they asked her where Avram Avinu was, and the answer was Aye, Sarah Ishtecha. If you want to know where a husband is holding and how he is in his ruchnius, Aye Sarah Ishtecha, you get the answer by where is his wife up to. Is his wife pushing him like Rachel pushed Rabbi Akiva to go learn for 24 years, 12 years, and then another 12 years, and she was alone, struggling, even though her father was one of the billionaires of that generation, but because he was angry that she married him and he knew nothing. Meantime, he came out to be the biggest of the big, but she was struggling the whole time. So that's the Aye Sarish. You want to know where the husband's holding? Ask where the wife is. Because if she is not a demanding person for other things that she could want or have or her neighbor had, but to only grow in ruchnias, push him to a shir, push him to do more chesed, be maskim to have extra guests more so than whatever is there. And if we do that, then you know where the husband is, based on the position and posture of the wife. And that is the drash that they make. Now, the Malach said to Sarah that Shov Oshuv Elecha Ko'es, after he told her that you should know a year from now you're going to give birth to a baby, and you're going to say, you're going to end up laughing. I mean, the Malach didn't say this, but I'm going to return I'm going to return to you. He didn't say when. But the truth is that we do not see the Malach ever coming back. Now, there's a sefer called Sefer HaPardes. And most tzaddikim said, even from 500 years ago, that Sefer HaPardes was written by Rashi. Not the Rashi commentary that we have under but that same man, that Rashi, Rashi HaKadosh, he was one of 6 people who got the title forever Kadosh. He wrote a sefer called Sefer HaPardes. And in it he asked this question, that the Malach said he's going to return. We never saw a Malach returning. So he answers and says, yes, we do. That when Avram Avinu took, which is our parsha, took Yitzchak to the Akedah, it says that a Malach came and told him, Al tishlach yorecha el anar ve'al tas lo me'uma. Don't do it. Don't shecht him. That was the Malach. The Malach said he was going to return. He didn't say he's going to return a year later. That's what we think. From we read the pasuk, we assume. But that's not when he came back. Because once he said it, there had to be a place that he came back. A malach doesn't say anything that doesn't happen. So he came back to tell, 38 years later, to tell Avram Avinu, do not do it. And from that stems the question, if Avram Avinu did not actually shecht his son, what do we make center stage when we come, let's say, Rosh Hashanah davening, Zechor Avram v'Akedas Yitzchak? We're talking the whole time about the Akedah, the Akedah never happened. He never shechted his son. So what are we so proud about? And why isn't it, we always talk about the Mesiras Nefesh and the Nisoyan of the Akedah about Avram Avinu, but we don't talk about Yitzchak. Of course, Yitzchak went along and Yitzchak was with it. But what brought about, so the Meforshim say that, and Reb Nachum Chnobler says this, whose yortzeit is tonight, Yud Aleph, Rachel Imenu's yortzeit. We know that Rachel Imenu was nifter on Yud Aleph Cheshvan, and so was Reb Nachum Chnobler. Rachel Imenu, look how much she accomplished in her life, and she was only 36 when she was nifter. But Reb Nachum Chnobler asked, what's this big business with constantly Avram Avinu with the Akedah? What about Yitzchak? So he said that Avram Avinu came to be makar, there's a Rabbanu Shalom, a God in the world, because he thought through the process. He took a look here, he took a look there. There was no one to learn from. But on his own, he came to a realization that there has to be a God. Things cannot just be flying together. The mountains, the seas, the lakes, the heavens, the stars. There has to be a creator in the world. So it was through his seichel, his power of his seichel. The Svarim say, and Reb Nachum quotes them, that the power of his seichel, but when he went to the Akedah, even though he was a person who thought through the process of everything, by the Akedah he didn't give it a thought. In other words, the tzivui to him by HaKadosh Baruch Hu was so penetrating and so pure that it remained in the state, because a person that would be thinking, a thinking human being, what's happening? I was promised I'm going to have children, I'm going to have the whole Eretz Yisrael, and now it's going to come to an end. He never had any such thought. And that's how it came about at such a level that we talk about Zechor Avraham v'Akedas Yitzchak. We don't say Zechor Yitzchak. We say Zechor Avram. Because that is the schus that a Yid is able to do something, the right thing, and not fall into all the machshavas of why not, and you can't afford, and you can't do, and you're overloaded, and you don't have the time. But you are thrust into the opportunity, and you meet the challenge with the graciousness and the goodness of how it was presented to you and came your way. Now the Ritva says a very interesting thing. We know that Yitzchak Avinu was 37 by the Akedah. And the Ritva, who lived 950 years ago and was a Talmud Muvik of the Rashba, the Ritva was a Talmud of the Rashba. So the Ritva says that Yitzchak Avinu after the Akedah, because from the sheer fear that struck him at the time of his neshama left him and went up to Shemayim for 2 years. That's what the Ritva says. And he brings a proof that for 2 years the neshama of Yitzchak Avinu went up and lived in Shemayim. And when the 2 years was up, he was 40, he just turned 40, came down, and he married Rivka. The Kabbalah Svarim explained that Yitzchak was really the neshama of Adam Arishon, and that Rivka was Chava, and that the shleimus of those neshamas coming into them happened, after the 2 years that he spent in Shemayim. And the Ritva brings a raya, a proof. He marshals support to this fact. He said, because how old was Avram Avinu when he gave birth to Yitzchak? He was 100 years old. That means the news that the Malach told him he was 99. But it was a year later she was expecting, and then Baruch Hashem gave birth. He was 100. How old was Avram Avinu when his grandsons Yaakov and Esav were born? He was 160, because if he was 100 when he gave birth to Yitzchak, the pasuk says, "V'Yitzchak ben shishim shana." But let us osam that Yitzchak was 60 when he gave birth to Yaakov and Esav. That would make Avram Avinu 160. Now, we know that Avram Avinu lived 175 years. But we're told that when the boys became bar mitzvah, Yaakov and Esav, when they became bar mitzvah, Avram Avinu died. He was nifter, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want him to see how his Einokol Esav went out, Latar Busra, that he went out to all of his evil, terrible activity. He killed people, adultery, everything in the book he was busy doing. And Hashem had Rachmanas on him. I don't want you to grieve over your grandson, so I'm going to take you back to Shemayim. And he was nifter. So if he was 100 when he had Yitzchak, and he was 160 when Yitzchak gave birth to Yaakov and Esav, so, and they died, and he died by their bar mitzvah, he was only 173. And we know that Avram Avinu was 175. The pasuk says so when he was nifter. Where's the 2 years? Says the Ritva that the 2 years that he was in Shemayim are not counted as part of his life. That he was really 62 when he gave birth to Yaakov and Esav. But since we do not count the years that a person lives in Shemayim, therefore the pasuk just says, "V'Yitzchak ben shishim shana b'ledes osam." He was only 60, but in reality, in the year chain, he was 62, and Avram Avinu was 162. Now we know that there was a story with Avram Avinu and with Avimelech. And Avimelech took Sarah, she was very beautiful, and he wanted to take her as a wife because he thought that she was a sister of Avram. And he had a lot of trouble when she was in the house. And he had a dream. You're going to die if you don't give the woman back to her rightful husband. Now, Avimelech said, why didn't you tell me this? I mean, look, I'm an innocent guy. Besam levavi uvanikyon kapay sisi zos. I'm an innocent. I was told it's a sister. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, yeah, I know it. So I'm not doing anything to you. And at the end of the story, the Psukim say that Avram Avinu and Avimelech made a bris, a covenant of peace, that his nation, the Yidden, will not start up with Avimelech and his nation, and vice versa. But the pasuk says that Avram Avinu said that I will make a covenant and it'll be for my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren with you. But when Avimelech answered and said that he's making the covenant, he only said himself. He didn't say any of his children or grandchildren. And the Meforshim point out, because Avram Avinu they made a shvuah, they swore to each other on this covenant that it would be in effect and realized and executed all the days of their existence and the existence of their children and grandchildren. But it was only Avram Avinu's children and grandchildren, because a Yid could be assured, say the Meforshim, that through the ruchnius of his home, how he said Shema, how he benched at a table, that he gives over the role of the role model aspects of what it means to be a Yid. And once you do that, you are assured that you have continuity in the generations. So Avram Avinu was able to say that I and my children and my grandchildren, because he knew that the children were absorbing and were drenched with his ruchnius. But Avimelech only could promise for himself, because what his children or grandchildren would do or wouldn't do was not something that he could make a shavua on, because they didn't have put into them the essence of what's going to be 50 years later. Because, unfortunately, you see how children by the Goyim and grandchildren, they drift. And they're not the same. So Avimelech could not make that commitment. Now, by the Akedah, there is a question asked, why is it that it took Avram Avinu 3 days to get to the Akedah? Because we know that he had experienced many times kfitzas haderech, that there was a miracle and the ground increased its speed. And he was able to come to a place, like it says when he went to look for an animal, that one girsa in the Medrashes, he ran all the way down to Hebron to find an animal and carry it back. While these guys were sitting there, that they were hot and thirsty and waiting to eat with him, how from there could he have run all the way over to Hebron? But he had kfitzas haderech, that he was able to do it in an hour, in a half an hour. So the question is, why does it say Bayom HaShlishi, Vayaras HaMakom Me'rochok? Why did it take him 3 days to get there? He had the power of kfitzas haderech. So the Meforshim answered, because the schus of the Akedah was so big for Klal Yisrael that there would be a kitrig always existing from the Goyim, that, you see, he was asked to give his son, and he was there at the Akedah 20 minutes later. But had he had time to think about it, he never would have done such a thing. So it's not such a schus. So therefore, the koyach of kfitzas haderech did not take place on his way to the Akedah, and it would take long enough that no goy could ever say, he got there in 10 minutes, he was asked, and he was excited, and he ran to do it. Because it took 3 days. He had plenty of time to think about it and turn back. And he didn't turn back. So that gave him the power to carry the schus ledoros. And it was not just at the spur of the moment that he was so excited to do the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he ran to shecht his son. So I want to say to each and every one of you that this parsha has such a chock full of dripping ha'oros and messages to us, to uplift, to bring about the beautiful ability of each and every Yid with each and every tenuah, what he says, what he does, and how he acts. And the Rabbanan Shalom should respond to the call of Rachel Imenu Mevaka al Boneha, and we should see what she longed for and is waiting for, the Geula Shlema.